My Lords, I beg leave to ask a question standing in my name on the order paper.
My Lords, we welcome trade and investment where it supports UK growth and jobs and meets our legal and regulatory requirements whilst not compromising national security. Where we believe there are concerns, we raise them, and where we need to intervene, we will. As the Prime Minister said at the Liaison Committee in July 2021, the National Security Advisor is reviewing this takeover, and it would be inappropriate, therefore, to comment until his review has concluded.
In thanking the Honourable Lord the Minister for that reply, and understanding that he can't say a great deal more about the review, nevertheless, can he say something about the clarity of the Chinese Communist Party's position in comparison with the position of the United Kingdom, in that they have a clear strategy of undermining resilience and security, of promoting dependency, of acquiring intellectual property and data, of destroying competitiveness through slave labour in everything from green energy through to surveillance equipment made in places like Xinjiang, which the Foreign Secretary has called a slave state practising genocide. In letting them acquire the UK's largest silicone chip factory, what account has been taken of these things, of the National Security and Investment Act, which will come into effect in January, the integrated review and the Competition and Mergers Authority's position?
Well, I totally share the Noble Lord's concerns about the actions of the Chinese Communist Party in Xinjiang, in Tibet, and in various other areas where they commit appalling human rights abuses. However, as he will be aware, I can't comment further on this particular takeover, but the National Security Advisor is reviewing it, and he will review it on national security grounds.
Regarding Chinese takeovers, does my noble friend share the concerns of a great many of us regarding the way that the Chinese are indeed extending their influence, buying their influence and taking over the Commonwealth, be it in Barbados, Sri Lanka or Sub-Saharan Africa? And there's been newspaper reports about this. My Lords, this is a deliberate thing they are doing. They are trying to supplant and plant their influence in the Commonwealth and elsewhere instead of British or Western influence.
I share the concerns of my noble friend. This question is getting more into foreign affairs than it is into business affairs. Yep. But I understand what he's saying. I have seen the reports, and I share his concern.
I'm disappointed by the response from the Noble Lord the Minister. The Chinese have made a huge effort to gain intellectual property over a number of years. I had to go and warn them about this way back at the end of the 90s, and they paid no attention then. And they're doing it now more and more and more. And here is a company with a large chunk of intellectual property working in the area of chips, which is something the Chinese are not good at, because the Americans have now stopped giving them to them as they were in the past. And it seems as though we're not really focusing on this. Do we have a real strategy for actually constraining China's aims in this area? Because it is extremely worrying.
Well, I mean, Xperia, of course, are not new to this particular company. They already own 15% of it, even before the latest takeover. But as I said, I can't comment any further on that particular transaction. But we will look carefully at all the facts of the case. Our powers are being strengthened with the National Security and Investment Act coming into force on the 4th of January next year. And we have retrospective powers under that Act, and we will not hesitate to act if we need to.
My Lords, the hardly a week goes by without the semiconductor shortage impacting some of our businesses in this country. So it's not just about security, it's about manufacturing. Meanwhile, there's an investigation into Newport Wafer Fab and a separate one going on into ARM. Wouldn't it make more sense if there was a holistic view of the semiconductor business in this country and a task force put together so that we can secure indigenous supplies of these absolutely vital components?
Well, the Noble Lord is, of course, aware that we have announced action in both of those cases. Both of those instances that he mentioned are currently being reviewed. And as I said, if we need to take action, we will do. In terms of his broader question about semiconductors, we already offer a lot of support to industry through the research councils and through the catapults, and we will continue to do so. And it's an area that the government is acutely aware of.
Lords, does the Minister agree it would be a disaster? My Lords, this is just part of a much wider picture, of course. Can the Noble Lord the Minister assure the House that in its forthcoming National Resilience Strategy, the Government will deal with such industrial issues in a sufficiently agile way that will be able to cope with a rapidly evolving corporate and technological landscape?
Indeed, the Noble Lord makes a good point, which is why, of course, we have strengthened our powers under the National Security and Investment Act, as well recently passed in this House, and we look forward to implementing that legislation on the 4th of January, which will require notifications in 17 key areas of the economy, and, of course, even in addition to that, the Secretary of State has additional call-in powers.
My Lords, one of the stated objectives...
It would be a disaster if the last and large remaining semi-fab business fell permanently into the hands of the Chinese.
Well, as I said in response to an earlier question, Xperia, the company concerned, already have 15% of this company anyway. They already own other semiconductor manufacturing plants in the UK, and the Noble Lord can read their statement as to what they intended to pursue for this business, if he wishes to do so.
Lord Campbell-Savours wishes to speak virtually. I think this is a convenient point for me to call him. Campbell-Savours.
Isn't the real issue where the wafer fab, now employing around 450, would have survived without positive Chinese intervention offering long-term viability? And if there's real concern over the survival of UK strategic high-tech, why not revisit lessons learnt in the 70s over Labour's NEB, the Conservatives' NEDC and BTG, and the role INMOS played in the early development of chips? Without a national initiative, we're conceding all to Taiwan, Japan, Korea and China, and a whinging United States of America losing markets.
Well, of course, I mean, I can't comment further on these transactions, as the Noble Lord knows, but semiconductors are an important aspect of our industrial future. We have some excellent manufacturing companies in the UK, and we will want that to continue.
My Lords, one of the stated objectives of a project awarded by Innovate UK to Newport Wafer is to provide the UK with a novel, sovereign gallium nitrate capability. Can my noble friend the Minister tell the House how this capability can possibly remain novel or indeed sovereign following an acquisition by a foreign state-backed entity?
Noble Lord is tempting me, but I cannot go any further than I have already stated. This takeover is being reviewed by the National Security Advisor, and we hope to reach a decision shortly.
My Lords, whilst there can be no doubt in the strategic importance to our national security of the part played by Newport Wafer Fab, can the Noble Lord the Minister explain why the Government did not intervene in the takeover earlier this year? And could the Noble Lord the Minister tell the House what tools the National Security Advisor will have at his disposal which could be applied when the ongoing review is completed?
I'm not sure which takeover the Noble Lord is referring to that we didn't intervene in. Perhaps we should have a separate conversation about that. But it's very clear that the government as a whole has substantial powers. As I said, the new NSI Act comes in on the 4th of January. It will be commenced, but we have retrospective powers that could go back to November 2020 under that Act.
My Lords, I'd like to go back to the question asked by the Noble Lord, Lord Fox, about a strategic overview, and ask the Minister particularly how many other firms in the semiconductor supply chain are foreign-owned.
I don't have that information to hand. It would depend on what firms the Noble Lady is referring to, what form of suppliers there were, and there are many hundreds of companies that serve some of these large manufacturing plants. But as I said in response to an earlier question, we understand the importance of semiconductor manufacture. We support it by the Engineering and Physical Sciences Council. We support the commercialisation of projects under the compound catapult, and we will continue to do so.
My Lords, the The suspicion locally is that the security part of this review is over and the hunt is on to be buying up shares from Nexperia in order to create a UK company. Given the importance of this to the electric vehicle manufacturing, of which there is a massive need at the present time, and the jobs to be created locally, does the Minister agree that this should be the Government's prime initiative and that we need a speedy solution so that investment can take place?
Well, I know the concerns locally about the investment, and I've spoken to Newport's MP about this, and she expressed her views of the takeover. But as I said, we take all of these factors into consideration, particularly that of national security, which the National Security Advisor is currently considering this takeover on, and we will reach a decision on that shortly.